Hey, welcome back to Trek on the Tube, and welcome more specifically to a review video. Oh my goodness, oh my god.
Oh my goodness, oh my damn.
We're back at it, we're reviewing Star Trek, who would have thought? Okay, maybe I'm overdoing it just a tad, because as some of you probably remember, I did promise I would do these season reviews, even if I'm incapable of doing those weekly episode reviews. So here we are, that's what we're doing, that's what we're talking about today. Star Trek Discovery Season 4. Fair warning to anyone new, all my reviews are spoiler heavy, considering they are originally intended for people that have seen the show and the current season, etc. Oh, and also, there will be no Easter egg segment, because we're talking about Season 4 as a whole. Okay, so where to begin? Well, for starters, this season of Discovery, much like all of the previous seasons of Discovery, delivered a very well-balanced mix of good and bad. Now, I'd argue that many of the greatest Star Trek seasons we've seen come out over the years have only had specks of bad sprinkled throughout a good majority of good, but that's not really something Discovery has done during its run, so far. The big difference between this season and the previous ones, however, in my opinion, is the divide between the good moments and the bad ones. Because you see, where previous seasons often jumped from the most incoherent, head-scratching plot points that could very well justify shutting the whole production down, to brilliantly executed story beats that not only tied into but enhanced the rich lore of Star Trek, here most of the good and bad align themselves closer to that centerline of simple adequateness. What's good is alright, and what's bad is actually rather more uninspired and flat than actively outrageous. In simpler terms, previous seasons of Discovery were either absolute garbage or they were absolutely amazing, and they would fluctuate between both, whereas this season kind of found like that middle ground where it's just constant meh. What a way to begin a season review, am I right? Alright. Okay, so here's the thing. The season-long story we got this time around was admittedly not only more Star Trek in style and feel than we've ever seen this show deliver, but it was also more coherent. Narratively, it made sense, and to a certain degree, it was smaller in scale, which meant not everything was universe-ending or mind-numbing to try to understand. There's an alien species that exists and lives outside our galaxy. They created this big anomaly that's destroying things. We gotta ask them to stop, preferably politely, with the main challenge being, the language barrier. I mean, come on, what's not to love? Yes, granted, there was a arrival at home kind of vibe in those final episodes, which kind of took away from the uniqueness of it all, but on the other hand, there was a motion picture vibe to them as well, which is probably the most Star Trek of all Star Trek films. It must be said, I do feel that the way the language worked and all its mechanics were a perfect balance between the Trekkiness of Star Trek and the emotionally heavy Discovery. So yeah, anyway, the main story worked pretty well. No major plot holes, a new alien species, and a solution that needed and promoted cooperation and communication. So what's the issue? The idea is pretty good, right? The story beat, the story, I guess, concept works. Yes. But not for 13 episodes. It doesn't work as a long format, or if we can call this long form. It doesn't work for 13 episodes. It's simply not enough to hold together the full season. I mean, maybe it could have been if it were executed differently. Say if the majority of the season was spent trying to communicate with the species rather than simply finding these 10C aliens. But, that's not what we got. So there's no point in even going there. What we did get was a concept for a mini-series or a mini-season stretched so far to death that pretty much every scene, every moment on screen was too long. Now, it's not so much all the talking that didn't work, and no, it's not that the show lacked action. On the contrary, I actually prefer my Star Trek to be talky, less, action-packed and in your face. I don't need car chases in my Star Trek, thank you.
Can you stop?
And once again, like with all previous seasons of Discovery, the actors gave this everything they had, so most of the smaller and more personal moments between two characters had quite a lot of heart, and depth. Dragging those moments out, however, prolonging those discussions about what to do with the DMA, how to react to Book's treason, doing that with what seems to be the sole purpose of padding the runtime, ultimately, negatively affected the season's pacing, which really is Season 4's biggest problem. Absolutely disgusting pacing. Now look, as I just mentioned, yes, the performances were all solid. The VFX were more than acceptable for a TV show. The music wasn't as obvious as it has sometimes been in the past. And for the most part, the directing was quite good as well. I mean, granted, Discovery always likes to double down on, certain filmmaking techniques that I'm still not convinced suit the franchise that well, but it is what it is. I still do feel like that was all a little more subtle this time around. The sets, the costumes, as usual, are high quality. One thing this show has never lacked is production value, and I'd even argue that now that the show has found its place within the universe in the 32nd century, most of the creative choices actually work very well. It's not the most visually innovative show on the planet, but at least the artistic vision that the show puts forward now better corresponds to the universe in which it's set. Being so far ahead in the future and kind of, I guess, paving its own path, this show doesn't need or, it doesn't have to adhere or respect a certain visual language. It can really do whatever the hell it wants. It is redefining, or rather defining, what Star Trek looks like in this era. So yeah, all of the creative choices, they're absolutely fine now. In conclusion, it is yet again the writing that has let Discovery down. Some elements did shine, like for example the odd and somewhat rushed but wonderfully executed departure of Tilly. Bouncing off of that, I found the season's first half to nicely adhere to the theme of self-discovery with multiple characters, or even the concept of an alien species so different from us. Conventional communication doesn't work. I mean, it has been explored before in Star Trek and in other films, but it still is, at its heart, a very Star Trek thing to do, and it suits the franchise and the show. But overall, for a season that had so much potential in its setting, it's very disappointing we never actually explored this time in the Star Trek story. I mean, save for a few rocks here and there, like a prison on an asteroid. I mean, there's almost a kind of irony to it. How Discovery, with all its history and baggage linked to the unnecessary reimagining of an established universe, gave itself a blank canvas but sidestepped that canvas altogether by traversing the galactic barrier. So yeah, there you have it. This is probably one of my shortest reviews ever. It's also not one in which I have much to say, but oddly enough, the season itself didn't have that much to say. I mean, they even took the one character that I felt like was going to become kind of like part of Star Trek Discovery's story in terms of representation and told him to fuck off, right? They just stopped doing that character. I guess the final thing I'd like to say is Discovery has always struggled with its identity, soft rebooting itself with every new season or even mid-season in the beginning. And although I hated that when we were in the thick of it, I find myself almost regretting that period in the show's existence, because now that it's actually found itself and it isn't hitting hard 180s every 10 episodes, it's actually kind of boring. Turns out that Discovery, without all of its eccentric mistakes and weird choices that make no sense whatsoever, or completely divergent stories about the Mirror Universe, it lacks personality. It has very little to offer. And there you have it, a somewhat negative review from a person that is kind of fed up with Discovery at this point. I know that it may seem biased because Discovery's never been my favorite show, but I really try to invest myself and find things that I enjoy in every Star Trek show that comes out, no matter what kind of format, no matter what kind of style they're going for. It's just that this really didn't deliver much. Yeah, what did you think of Discovery Season 4? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Do you agree with me? Yes, no, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. A big thanks to all of the channel patrons. As usual, like, subscribe, share. Tell everyone that I exist. It always helps. And thank you for watching. And yeah, live long and prosper.